Imagine you're sitting in a dimly lit room.
Setting the scene. I like it.
Right. So you've got three monitors glowing in front of you. They're casting this pale blue light across your desk.
Classic Security Operations Center vibes.
Exactly. And suddenly, a massive spike in failed logins hits your dashboard. The alerts are just multiplying by the second. Red warnings are flashing everywhere.
What would usually cause panic?
But you pause. You aren't scared. Your heart rate doesn't even spike because, this isn't a disaster. This is exactly the puzzle you were trained to solve.
It's just another Tuesday.
Right. You open up your logs, you start correlating the timestamps, and you breathe out. You whisper to yourself, okay, this is a brute force attack, but wait, it's coming from an internal IP address. Who triggered it?
And that is where the real work begins.
Welcome to the world of the frontline cyber defender. And welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking you on a personally curated journey straight into the modern cybersecurity landscape of 2026.
And honestly, the stakes right now, they've absolutely never been higher. The way organizations are forced to operate has fundamentally shifted from even just a few years ago.
I completely agree. And to really understand that shift, we have this incredible stack of sources to go through with you today. We're essentially looking at this ecosystem from three very distinct altitudes.
Starting from the very top, I assume.
Yes, at the very top, we have a dense, highly theoretical federal guideline from the Department of Commerce. It's NIST Special Publication 800-172.
Heavy read-in.
Oh, totally. Very dense. Then we drop down to the tactical level. We're using a 2026 career guide from CyberLad, which gets right into the weeds of the exact skills, the tool sets, and the salaries for the modern SOC analyst.
Security Operations Center, for those following along.
Right. And finally, we're taking it all the way down to the trenches with a very raw, unfiltered Reddit thread.
Those are always the best.
They really are. It's from the Our Security Career Advice community. It's just IT professionals debating the harsh realities of transitioning from the help desk into actual security roles.
Our mission for this deep dive is really to bridge that massive gap. Because it is one thing to mandate a complex security protocol from a fancy desk in Washington, D.C.
Right, on paper.
Exactly.
Right.
On paper, it's easy. But it is an entirely different reality to be the person configuring the firewall or, hunting through Azure logs at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
We want to connect those top-down theoretical frameworks with the bottom-up, day-to-day reality of the analysts who are actually defending these networks.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that top-down perspective in NIST 800-172.
Sure.
Now, I read through this, and the entire framework revolves around protecting CUI, controlled unclassified information,
Right.
and specifically on non-federal systems. But I want to ask you, why is the government issuing such intense, highly specific guidelines for networks they don't even own? I mean, we're talking about university research servers, local state governments, private defense contractors.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to the reality of how APTs operate today.
Advanced persistent threats.
Right. The federal government knows their own internal, highly classified networks are heavily fortified. They've spent billions on them.
Yeah, you aren't just hacking into the Pentagon easily.
Exactly. So an advanced persistent threat, whether that is a nation-state actor or just a massive, well-funded criminal syndicate, they aren't going to just throw zero-day exploits at the Pentagon's front door. That's a waste of resources.
So they go through the side door?
They go after the supply chain. They target the private contractor who's building the satellite components, or the university doing the preliminary materials research.
Oh, I see.
That CUI, that unclassified data, it might not be nuclear codes, but if you aggregate enough of it,
You can put the puzzle together.
precisely, an adversary can entirely map out a critical government program just by collecting the seemingly boring, unclassified pieces from third parties.
That makes total sense. They're
Yeah.
basically just looking for the weakest link in the chain.
Always.
But what actually stood out to me in the NIST document is how they tell these organizations to defend themselves. It is a really heavy defense-in-depth strategy, but they break it down into three core concepts.
The 3 pillars, yeah.
Right. Penetration-resistant architecture, damage-limiting operations, and cyber resiliency.
It's a very comprehensive approach.
Can you break down the actual mechanics of what that looks like in practice? Because it sounds amazing on paper, but I'm curious how a mid-sized contractor actually implements that without grinding their business to a halt.
It requires a fundamental shift in architecture. So take the first one, penetration-resistant architecture. This is not just throwing up a robust perimeter firewall and calling it a day. The days of the hard shell and soft center are over.
So what replaces it?
It mandates severe network segmentation, isolated enclaves. If you are that mid-sized contractor, your marketing department's network must be completely physically or logically severed from your advanced R&D network.
But wait, how does that translate practically for the users? I mean, doesn't that create a massive bottleneck for business operations if everything is walled off from everything else?
It does create friction. Absolutely.
People hate friction.
They do, but that friction is intentional. And that leads directly into the second concept, which is damage-limiting operations. The NIST framework essentially forces organizations to operate under the assumption that a breach is inevitable.
Right, like it's not if, it's when.
Exactly. The perimeter will fail, an APT will get inside. It's just a statistical certainty. When they do get in, damage-limiting operations are all about minimizing the blast radius.
Containing the fire.
You limit lateral movement through strict access controls and that microsegmentation we just talked about. If an attacker compromises a laptop in HR, they shouldn't be able to just casually pivot over to the engineering servers.
Because there's no direct pathway.
Right. And the third concept, cyber resiliency and survivability, seems to be the ultimate goal of all of this.
Yeah, that part was fascinating. The idea that even while you are actively bleeding, right?
Yep.
Even while your systems are compromised and you're actively fighting an attacker on your network, your critical mission must keep running.
You can't just unplug the data center every time a SIM alert goes off. The business has to survive the attack, not just stop it.
But doing that requires more than just technical segmentation, doesn't it?
It does. It requires actively engaging the adversary. You have to fight back.
Which brings us to my absolute favorite part of this NIST publication. I loved this section.
The psychological stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
The document actually moves beyond just building technical walls and starts talking about psychological warfare. It outlines 5 desired effects you want to have on the attacker.
Redirect, preclude, impede, limit, and expose.
Exactly. I was honestly surprised to see how much of this framework relies on human psychology rather than just lines of code or firewall rules.
Well, you have to remember, you're fighting a human. It is entirely about outmaneuvering them. An APT relies heavily on stealth and the assumption that the network they are exploring is legitimate.
Right.
If you can inject doubt into their process, you burn their most valuable resources, which are time and money.
The text gives some incredibly vivid examples of this, too. One that really caught my eye was the employment of dual authorization for critical operations.
Oh, that's a classic one.
It's just like that old movie trope where the 2 officers have to turn their submarine launch keys at the exact same time. NIST recommends requiring 2 different authenticated users to approve highly sensitive data transfers or system changes.
And think about the mechanics of that from the attacker's perspective. It's devastating.
How so?
Well, say an APT spends 3 months quietly compromising a senior engineer's account. They're being super careful. They finally get in, and they think they have the keys to the kingdom.
They're ready to steal the data.
Right. But when they try to exfiltrate that data, the system suddenly prompts them, requiring a secondary approval from a totally separate department head.
Oh.
Suddenly, the attacker's single point of compromise is completely useless. They now have to risk their entire covert operation to laterally move and compromise a second specific human target without tipping off either user or the security operations center.
That is brilliant. It just ruins their day.
It really does.
And if they do try to move laterally, they might run into the deception tactics NIST recommend.
Yes, the active deception.
They suggest actively building fake data, fake servers, entirely decoy environments just sitting there. But I want to push back on that a bit. Is deception really practical for most organizations, or is it just a fancy buzzword? Because to me, it seems incredibly resource-intensive to maintain a fake network alongside your real one.
It is resource-intensive. You aren't wrong about that. But the return on investment against an APT is massive.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's say an attacker is carefully sneaking through a network. They've bypassed the perimeter. They finally find what looks like the crown jewel, right? A database of secret engineering schematics.
Jackpot.
Exactly. They spend weeks slowly, quietly siphoning that data out to avoid triggering any bandwidth alarms. They think they've won. But what they don't know is that they've stolen a digitally watermarked decoy.
Oh, man.
The very moment that file was even accessed, it silently alerted the internal security team to the attacker's exact location, the tools they were using, and their exfiltration route.
So they were caught immediately.
Right. You didn't just block the attack, you exposed their entire playbook without them even knowing it.
That is incredible. But writing a penetration-resistant architecture or designing a decoy server on paper in Washington is one thing. Actually building it, monitoring it, and catching that APT when they trip the wire, that requires the actual people on the front lines.
The people doing the heavy lifting.
Which brings us perfectly to our second source,
Yeah.
the 2026 CyberLad Guide on the Modern SOC Analyst.
The evolution of the SOC analyst role is just fascinating when you compare it to even a decade ago.
Yeah, the guide makes it clear it's no longer just a junior IT person sitting in a basement staring at a dashboard, waiting for a red light to blink.
Not at all.
The guide breaks down the 2026 role into 5 dynamic pillars: real-time security monitoring, investigating events, threat hunting, incident response, and continuous improvement.
Right.
What stands out to you about how these responsibilities have shifted recently?
The shift from reactive to proactive is by far the biggest change. Let's look at threat hunting versus incident response.
Okay.
Historically, you waited for the SIM, the security information, and an event management system to generate an alert. A light flashes, and then you responded.
Reactive.
Totally reactive. Today, a senior analyst is expected to actively hunt. They formulate a hypothesis. For example, they might say, if an APT bypassed our multi-factor authentication, what anomalous behavior would they exhibit in our Azure environment?
So they are looking for trouble before the alarm goes off.
Exactly. They proactively query the logs in tools like Splunk or Sentinel, looking for that specific behavioral chain long before any automated alarm ever triggers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Given all the advancements in automation we've seen, why do we even need the human for that?
The AI question.
Yeah. The guide talks heavily about AI filtering out massive amounts of noise and false positives. If the AI is so good at establishing a baseline and flagging anomalies, aren't we just a few updates away from the AI doing the threat hunting completely by itself?
I totally understand the skepticism there. But AI lacks business context. And more importantly, it lacks risk tolerance.
What do you mean by business context?
Okay, an AI model might flag a massive encrypted data transfer to a server in Germany at 3 in the morning. It flags it as a critical exfiltration event.
Because it looks exactly like an APT behavior.
Exactly. It looks terrible on paper. But the human analyst knows that the engineering team is pushing a major scheduled update for a European product launch that night. If the AI was fully autonomous and automatically severed that connection to quote-unquote limit damage, it just caused a massive business outage.
It broke the company while trying to save it.
Right. Only humans can weigh the technical anomaly against the operational reality of the business.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The analyst is essentially the bridge between the technical alert and the real-world business impact.
Precisely.
And speaking of technical shifts, the guide highlights that cloud logs, specifically from AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, they now make up over 60% of all SOC alerts.
It's huge.
The traditional on-premise perimeter is essentially dead at this point.
It really is. And because of that, identity is the new perimeter. The days of attackers spending months writing custom, undetectable malware to punch through a corporate firewall are fading fast.
Why bother?
Exactly. Why bother doing all that hard work when you can just log in as a legitimate user?
They are just exploiting MFA fatigue or abusing oath permissions.
Precisely. And honestly, it's actually more insidious than that. With MFA fatigue, they aren't even hacking the system.
They're hacking the human.
They're hacking the user's patience. They trigger 50 approval requests to an employee's phone right at dinner time. Just buzz, buzz, buzz.
Until the exhausted employee just hits approve to make it stop.
Yes. And with oath abuse, attackers are tricking users into granting malicious third-party applications persistent access to their cloud environments. Once that digital token is granted, the attacker doesn't even need the password anymore.
They just have a permanent backdoor.
Right.
So the modern SOC analyst really has to be an absolute expert in identity behavior. They are using tools like CrowdStrike and Sentinel, not just to look for classic malware signatures, but to analyze the behavioral telemetry of a user.
They have to ask, is it normal for this specific service principal to access this particular database at this exact time from this new geolocation?
It's detective work.
Exactly. And mastering those mechanics, understanding how to tear apart raw network packets in Wireshark while simultaneously managing complex cloud identity policies, that combination is incredibly lucrative right now.
Oh, the financial breakdown in the CyberLad piece is wild.
It's eye-opening.
In 2026, entry-level U.S. salaries are starting between $60,000 and $80,000. just for entry level.
And it scales up fast.
Mid-level jumps up to the 85,000 to 110,000 range. And senior threat hunters, they are easily clearing $130,000. Plus, it is a massive global market.
It's not just a U.S. phenomenon.
Not at all. Senior roles in the UAE are pulling in 45,000 dirhams a month. The market in India is offering 17 to 30 lakhs per annum for top-tier talent.
The demand is clearly outstripping the supply of capable analysts globally, but that creates a massive bottleneck for the industry.
How so?
How do we actually build these defenders? You can't just drop someone with a brand new computer science degree into a SOC and expect them to hunt a nation-state APT through an Azure environment.
Especially if they don't even know how a basic corporate network functions.
Right.
Which is the perfect transition to our third source. Because with salaries like that, everyone wants in on this industry.
Naturally.
So we are looking at this raw Reddit thread from Our Security Career Advice. The poster is a classic case. They have an IT degree, 0 certifications, and they recently landed a Tier 1 help desk role.
We've all been there.
Yeah. And they are staring up at this massive cybersecurity mountain, feeling completely stuck, just resetting passwords all day. They're essentially begging the community for a shortcut.
Asking for the magic bullet.
Exactly. How long do I have to stay here?
Yeah.
What is the magic certification that gets me out of this basement and into the SOC?
This raises an important question about how we train our workforce. And the responses in that thread are a harsh reality check for a lot of newcomers.
All right, harsh.
The most striking advice comes from a 20-year IT veteran who tells them point blank, do not rush out of the help desk.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
Isn't resetting passwords and fixing jammed printers all day a massive waste of time for someone whose ultimate goal is to hunt nation-state threat actors? How does telling someone to turn their computer off and on again prepare them for NIST compliance?
Because it teaches you the natural mechanics of failure.
Interesting.
The veteran's point is that you have to learn how systems actually work in practice, how they are duct-taped together in the real corporate world, and how they naturally break on their own before you can possibly understand how an attacker maliciously breaks them.
There's a great analogy in the thread about engine oil that touches on this.
Yes.
I noted that one down. A user said, don't just be the guy who knows how to check the oil. Be the guy who can take the engine apart.
That's the core of it.
It's a fundamental mindset shift. You aren't just following a script to fix the CEO's printer. You need the curiosity to investigate why that specific printer is suddenly routing traffic through an external IP address in Russia.
Exactly. But that level of deep intrinsic curiosity seems to be fading, which is causing serious issues in modern SOCs.
There was a comment about that, right?
Yeah, there's a comment from an information security manager in the thread, and they're just lamenting the lost art of troubleshooting. They actually enforce a strict rule for their Tier 1 analysts. Before you can escalate a ticket or ask a senior engineer for help, you have to document exactly what you tried to fix yourself.
You could practically feel the manager's frustration through the screen reading that. They are dealing with junior analysts who just stare blankly when asked that question.
Blank stares.
These are people who have become so entirely reliant on their automated SIEM tools that they completely lack the underlying logic of how to solve a problem manually.
If Splunk doesn't hand them the exact remediation steps on a silver platter, they are paralyzed.
And that is a terrifying vulnerability if you are facing an APT.
It is. We talked about deception earlier, right? Well, attackers use deception too. They will actively manipulate your logs. They will feed your SIEM false telemetry to blind your automated tools.
So the tool lies to the analyst.
Yes. And if your analyst doesn't know how to bypass the shiny dashboard and manually parse the raw logs, or pull a raw packet capture to see what's really happening on the wire, the attacker wins.
That over-reliance on automation also ties into a really brutal warning from another user regarding the pen testing field.
Oh, the ethical hacking path.
Right. Historically, being the ethical hacker was the cool, highly coveted path. But this user shared that their company actually fired their third-party penetration testing firm.
Fired them completely.
Because they started using AI tools that generated better, more comprehensive vulnerability reports for a fraction of the cost.
It is a critical warning about hyper-specializing in easily automated niches. If your only skill is running standard vulnerability scans and generating a PDF report, an AI can replace you today. Literally today.
So where is the human value?
The human value in 2026 is in the translation. It's taking that vulnerability scan, understanding the unique, messy business architecture we talked about earlier, and communicating the actual operational risk to non-technical executives.
AI cannot sit in a boardroom and argue for budget allocation.
Exactly. Not yet, anyway.
The thread also dives deep into the certification landscape, which is notoriously overwhelming for beginners. And there was a very specific trap that was called out perfectly.
The original poster was asking if they should just hunker down and study for the CISSP to skip the line.
Yes, the CISSP trap.
It happens constantly.
A senior user immediately shot it down. They had to explain that while the CISSP is heavily requested by HR filters on job applications, it legally requires 5 years of verified professional security experience to even hold the credential.
You can spend months studying. You can drop hundreds of dollars to pass the grueling exam, and you still won't be a CISSP without the work history.
For a Tier 1 help desk worker, it is practically useless for their immediate goal of just getting into a SOC.
So the consensus advice pivoted them away from paper chasing and toward practical mechanics.
They recommended foundational knowledge, like the CompTIA Security Plus and Network Plus.
Right, learn the basics first.
But more importantly, they hammered home the need for hands-on experience, build a home lab, deploy an Active Directory environment on virtual machines, infect it with a benign malware sample yourself, and watch how the logs react.
It's all about taking the initiative. They advised the poster to use their current access on the help desk to network with the internal security team.
Ask them what tools they use. Ask for mock interviews.
It's about proving you have that deep curiosity to take the engine apart.
So what does this all mean when we put all these pieces together? We have journeyed from the absolute highest levels of federal policy all the way down to a Reddit user trying to figure out how to escape the help desk.
It's a wide spectrum.
But when you look closely, you realize it is one massive interconnected ecosystem. The Department of Commerce writes NIST 800-172, mandating that critical data must be protected using advanced defense in-depth strategies to survive an APT.
But that high-level mandate is just ink on paper, without the human being sitting in the SOC in 2026, actively hunting through cloud logs for abused OAuth tokens.
Exactly. And those elite SOC analysts, they're forged in the fires of the IT help desk. They're learning the lost art of troubleshooting, figuring out the mechanics of failure, and realizing that they have to outsmart not just the automated tools, but the deeply patient human being on the other side of the screen.
It is an ecosystem that currently relies on human ingenuity to counter human malice.
Well said.
But that leaves us with a fascinating and perhaps slightly unsettling thought to ponder as we look beyond 2026.
Oh.
We discussed how AI is currently filtering the noise for defenders and how it is already automating the job of the pen tester.
Right.
But as AI gets exponentially better at both launching highly sophisticated polymorphic attacks and instantly contextualizing defensive alerts on the other side, the purely technical code versus code battlefield might eventually run entirely on autopilot.
Machines fighting machines.
Exactly. If the machines are fighting the machines at light speed, the future SOC analysts might need to look very different. Will they need to be less of a computer scientist and more of a behavioral psychologist?
That is a wild thought.
Will their true value be sitting in that dimly lit room, looking completely past the AI-generated telemetry, to focus entirely on outthinking the psychology, the motives, and the human mind hiding behind the advanced persistent threat?
That is something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Whether you are drafting federal policy, managing a security operations center, or just starting your very first day on the help desk, remember that you are part of a vital, incredibly dynamic puzzle. Keep learning, keep taking the engine apart, stay curious, and always question the world of information around you. We will catch you on the next one.